sunflowers is where we're focusing our energy today. And John has interacted and traveled to over 200 countries throughout the whole world to share his knowledge about sunflowers. And thank you to those of you who are joining us YouTube. I got a little excited, and I welcomed you, or I welcomed everyone before you joined us. But YouTube, thank you for joining us. If you are joining on YouTube, please use the comment feature for any questions that pop in your mind as we're learning about sunflowers. And for those of you joining us on Zoom, which there's been a few others, Mrs. Konechki's class, St. Mark's Lutheran in Bemidji. We have the Beacon program from Melrose, Minnesota, J.A. Hughes fourth graders, third graders from Red Lake Elementary, second graders from Worthington Prairie Elementary, Ridgeview Community School, Zion Lutheran from Mayer. We are so glad you're here. If you are joining on Zoom, use the Q&A feature. The chat should be doesn't really work so well in these webinars, so we use the Q&A. So if anything pops in your brain that you want to know as you're watching this virtual field trip, please use those and ask your questions. So as I was telling you, we are in the presence of a sunflower expert, Mr. John Swanson, and we are going to travel virtually to Crookston, Minnesota, to the University of Minnesota Crookston campus, where John is in a sunflower field. So John, welcome. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the field that you're in?
Well, thank you. We're in a research plot here at Crookston, Minnesota. It's Megan McKay's disease plot. So we'll see lots of diseases here, and I don't think I'll spend much time on diseases, but it shows you the sunflower plant, and we can talk about the different parts of the plants and so forth. This is one of the locations for the University of Minnesota, which has off-station locations for doing research. We're about 300 miles northwest of the Twin Cities. So with that, we'll start here looking at a sunflower field that you can take a look at the beautiful sunflower field that was in bloom. So we'll switch to that. And if you look at that sunflower, they're all facing one direction. Why do you think that might be? It's because the sunflower always opens towards the east, even though you'll read in books, and there's several songs that talk about sunflower following the sun. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But you can look here, almost all the heads are facing this way, even though they're diseased. And we're facing towards the east. So
John, one quick question. So that video that we just saw of beautiful blooming sunflowers, was that from a field on your farm, or tell us about those sunflowers?
It's a field near my farm, and that's a pretty good sized field. If you'll see in the valley here, and on the edges of the valley, that was taken just out of fertile Minnesota, and it's a pretty good sized field. I think about 200 acres or 250 acres, and we're going to take a couple shots of that field at different stages as we go along. So it happens to be a neighbor of mine's field, and it was better to take shots there.
So that's an interesting, we have several classes from Fertile Beltrami, so that's fun. That field was near them. And you said it was 200 acres. Could you give us a sense of how big an acre is, and maybe how big the field that you're standing in right now? How many acres is that one?
Well, this one here is probably 5 or 6 acres. Not a huge field. An acre is 42,560 square feet, which is a lot of numbers to look at and probably doesn't make much sense to you. But an acre is about twice the size of most lots in town, or a little bit more. So that gives you some kind of an idea of what it is.
And I've heard it's roughly the same size as a football field. Would you say that's accurate? An acre is about a football field?
Let's see, I forget the footage. I haven't multiplied it out, but it's 100 yards is 300 feet times 50. Yeah, somewhat close to an acre.
Close enough. Yeah, listen to that, students. We're using math all the time, mental math. So there is a question already, John, in the chat. Students are curious how and why sunflowers get so tall.
Okay, one, we try to breed for shorter stature sunflowers, not really sunflower, but they're reaching for the sun. They're reaching for sunlight, and the leaves and the stalks and the bud, when it's in the bud stage, and we'll look at some flowers that are closer to the bud stage here in just a minute. But they grow up trying to reach towards the sun, and the higher the population, the later you plant, the taller they'll grow. Uh, and why would that be? Well, the longest day of sunlight is the middle of June. You want to have the sunflower well in development by that time. So we look a little
Okay.
bit at the plant here. Were there other questions?
Nope, go for it. Tell us about the parts of a sunflower. That looks great.
Okay, these are the bracts or uh, parts of the plant. You can rub off the florets. These are bracts, and they help to cover the plant. This would be the head. This would be the stalk, and these are the leaves. And you can see they're pretty good sized leaves. They've shrunk down a little bit from when they first started, but they're really large leaves, and they get the energy from the sun to develop grain and oil. Uh, Sunflower is primarily grown for oil type. There's about 2 million acres of oil and about 200,000 acres of confection or edible sunflower. And you can use the oil for a lot of the edible crops or edible products, such as breaking breads and uh, on salad bars and for trail mixes and those things. So we'll get into the products here in a little bit, but we'll
Yes, there are,
walk around
John.
here.
There's lots of questions. So I'm going to give a couple of you. This is students in Miss Carlson's class want to know what month you plant the sunflowers. And as well you're answering that, I think we have a picture of a sprouting seed. So why don't you tell us when you plant the sunflowers and maybe we can pull that picture up.
Sure. Well, we normally plant sunflower in the month of May. It can be towards the beginning or later. And in parts of North Dakota, they plant into June. And in South Dakota, they maybe get to the end of June. So it depends upon where you're located and when you can expect a freeze. Normally, we try to have them done blooming before we have a freeze. And we'll look at what we call blooming here in a minute. So if you want to follow me along.
Yes, as we're walking, there's a
So
few questions, John. Several classes, including Mrs. White's fourth graders, want to know how many sunflower seeds are on one sunflower plant.
in each head, there's approximately 3,500 seeds. It'll vary with the size of the head. As you get bigger heads, you can have more, but about 3,500 is kind of an average. Uh, and that would be an 8 to 10 inch head. You
Okay.
can have 12-inch heads and you can have 4-inch heads, depending upon how much moisture you have and the growing conditions. And each year will vary. So let's look a little bit more towards, or do you have more questions on that area?
I do, but why don't you show us or tell us about that sunflower in your hand and I'll get some more questions ready.
Okay, this happens to be a ornamental sunflower. You see, I have it for talking about the parts of the flower. These are ray petals, and that's where it faces to the east when it comes out, and they don't follow the sun anymore. The leaves will follow the sun, but it's kind of a wives' tale that they turn with the sun because they do not. Uh, and so this is a sterile plant. There's no male parts to it and only females waiting for pollen. And they'll be waiting a long while if this was a whole field. And this is another one looking at another ornamental. And I apologize that I don't have any normal sunflower to show, but we're about a month and a half late for showing pollinating sunflower. But every row of the plant, I'll show you a picture here that this is easier to explain on. This is pollen. And I think we have a picture too to show you of a sunflower head that's blooming. Let's take a quick look at that. If you look on the leaf, you'll see all the pollen on it. And each individual seed is a complete flower. And in that, I mean it's both the male and female parts. So this here is the male parts. These here are female parts, and these are already pollinated. So you get a kind of a look at a plant, uh, and every seed becomes, or every one of these pollen uh, parts and the female part become a seed. So it's considered a complete flower in that it has both male and female parts.
So, John, there's some questions about kind of the
Okay.
timing. So, from when you plant the seed, how long does it take to get a flower? And then from when you have a flower, if it gets pollinated, how long does it take to make a new sunflower seed?
Okay. The process is if you plant in May, you'll probably be pollinating the beginning of August or the last week of July, again, depending upon temperatures and so forth. But that's rough number. So you're about 60 days into pollination from planting, and it really varies with how fast they come up. A project that might be of interest to some of your students is to plant a seed in a ragdoll, which would be just a paper uh, paper towel, and keep it wet for 7 to 10 days, and you can actually see how a sunflower germinates. Here, I'll show you on a seed. Uh, you have a sunflower seed, then it gets to be a uh, hulled sunflower, and this is the germinating part. And so this, if that's damaged, it will not grow. You can have a sunflower seed that's had a little damage on the cotyledons, and you'll see that as it's developing out of the ground. So you can plant those in a classroom, and in about a week to 10 days, you'll see the cotyledons come out, and you'll see the root developing along with the root hairs. So you can see the taproot starting out, you see the hair roots, and you see the cotyledons. The first true green parts are considered cotyledons. They aren't considered leaves. Then the second set or first true leaves come out a few days later.
So, I have a quick question about that. So, John, if we wanted to plant sunflower seeds, we'd want to take the shell or the hull off, the hard outer part, and we just plant that inside part that you just showed us, right?
You could do that, but you can just as well leave them in the shell because it'll
Oh,
push out. You do not have to uh, uh, dehull or take the hull off. In fact, this more than likely will damage some of the growing points when you're taking it off. And that gives you a look at how much strength there is. If you take some of the seeds and try to hull them yourself, you see how much strength there is in that hull. That hull is a very strong product. It's uh, one of the stronger natural occurring fibers. It's next to that of feathers, and feathers per weight are stronger than steel, but
oh, wow.
don't have much weight, and so there's not nearly as strength. Uh,
All right, John, we have a bunch of questions. I'm going to ask a couple more. And if you want to stay in the same spot, that's great. Or if you have another place to walk to, you can walk while we're
we're
talking.
gonna we're gonna talk a little bit about the roots here too at this
Okay,
stage.
perfect. Before we get to roots, Mrs. Wooten's first graders are curious if sunflower petals grow in any other colors besides yellow.
Oh yes, I have a friend that's bred probably 25 different colors. They come in red, white, uh, yellow, orange, uh, among others, and some are multiple colors too. So they're called ornamentals and are used for bouquets uh, and are pretty widely spread across the world.
Awesome. Mr. O's class in Rochester has lots of great questions. This one is from Julia. She's curious what happens to the sunflowers in the winter.
Uh, well, the sunflowers are dead during the winter. They freeze, like most crops that we grow. So you want to have them harvested and put in the bin where they're stored at a 10% moisture or thereabout. And moisture is critical in storage for high oil crops like sunflower. And we got a crop that's close to 50% oil. It can get rancid if you have it wet or have it heat and
So, John, we have a couple questions about the sunflowers that
okay,
you
we'll move
grow.
on. Sure.
One quick question. Do you grow
Go ahead.
sunflowers for the seeds that we eat, or you mentioned that some sunflower seeds are used for oil. So the sunflowers you grow, or maybe the ones that we can see in this field, what are they used for?
Well, the sunflower in this field are primarily oil type. Uh, I've grown both convection oil and something called con oil. And con oils are convection male and oil female. And those are primarily used for decorticating because it has a larger nut mate. So all three I've grown at times or in different markets.
Sure. Okay, well, I know you wanted to share with us some interesting things about sunflower roots, so let's dive in and look at those.
Okay, look at the amount of roots that are big, and the sunflower roots go down at least as far as the plant is tall, and usually a foot to two deeper. Here at Crookston, I've done checking for with radioisotopes in the next row over for sugar beet on the week of July 4th, and they were already down 6 feet. Now, they don't have great big roots like these going down that deep. Uh, these here are more like brace roots, but there's some really fine roots that go down really far. And it's necessary to have those kind of roots to hold a head way up in the air. Because if you think about the sunflower with that big head up in the air, it can have a lot of wind resistance and tends to want to tip over if you don't have good roots.
Awesome. Okay, this is a special shout out, John. Matthew says, "Hi, Grandpa." So thanks, Matthew, for joining us. You have some friends in the audience, John. And there's been a number of questions about how do you harvest sunflowers? Do you use a combine? What does it look like? So if you want to show us what you're showing right now, and then we have a picture of the combine, you can talk about that.
Yep, we'll go to that probably next. See, this head is pretty close to being time to combine. You want to get the moisture down in that, well, below 19% anyway to harvest efficiently. 10% if you're going to put it in the end, if you're going to dry it. And if you look at this stalk, I mean, there's a pretty hefty stalk and leaves that are really crisp, dry. This particular field was sprayed, I believe, with sodium chloride or salt water about a week ago, and it dries down pretty quickly. See, the bracts are turning brown, and the seed itself is really kind of sits in these heads.
We're gonna pause here for just a second, John. Sarah, our camera person, I'm gonna
Okay,
have Sarah and John head back towards the edge of the field because our signal right here is getting a little bit rough. So if John can bring his sunflower with him, we can still look at that sunflower. We're just gonna
okay.
move spots. Yep,
So
you
We'll
guys
try
can
it.
back.
Is
yeah,
this better now?
it is.
Well, you look at the size of this stalk, and you look at the nice pith area. So this is called the pith area of the sunflower. It has just a structural advantage for the crop. This outside area is the cambium area, and that's where nutrients flow up and down into the plant to make it grow. And if you think this is a pretty good sized stalk, it is. There's a lot of sunflower that has even bigger stalks than this. So you have to have a pretty sturdy harvesting uh, machine to harvest stuff that size. So I'll put this down over here and we'll go over and talk a little bit about harvesting. Want to put up the sunflower header, and sunflower is harvested with a combine with a head on it, especially for sunflower. And the heads are designed to catch the seed that's shattered off when you're moving the head to gather it into the combine. Uh, Again, we talked about the moisture being, ideally for storage about 10%. So if it's that dry, they want to shell. So we have to pull it into the combine with as least amount of shaking and loss as we can. You'll see this header that we have that has pans out in front of it. If you look close in on it, it has a bumper bar that leans the heads over. So we try to take as little of the stalk as we can in, because you have to separate the stalk, the petioles, uh, and the back of the head, and all the fines that come with it from the seed. And that seed goes into a hopper. That hopper gets dumped into a grain cart or into a truck to move to the bins for storage. So sunflower can be stored for quite a while, uh, over a year. In fact, sometimes it can be stored for 2 to 3 years. So sunflower is a crop that can be stored for quite a while if it's dry and so forth.
Thanks, John. So I have a couple questions. This was actually one of our very first questions asked from Penelope in Rochester. She was looking at the plants in this field that you had mentioned. Some of them have diseases. She's curious what causes those diseases. And then related, the first graders from Fertile Beltrami are wondering if there's bugs or animals that like to eat sunflowers and make them not so healthy.
Oh yes, there's lots of challenges to growing sunflower. Uh, Birds can be a challenge. I think we had a head back here that had some damage from birds. Uh, See, they've been pecked at a little bit there and here. This is bird damage on a sunflower head. Uh, you can have insects that can eat uh, sunflowers, and especially when they're in the pollination stage to starting to mature. You got uh, several insects that eat in the head, and none of us like to bite into something that an insect's already eaten. So insect control is pretty important if you're growing convection sunflower, and it's important for oil type too, because it's necessary to keep that damage down to as little as possible to none.
And then how
We'll
about
move.
the
Okay.
diseases? What causes like the leaves to turn yellow or some of the sunflowers to look like they aren't doing so well?
Well, the yellow is maturity. That's just normal maturity. This here is, I think that's maturity in this crop, this one here, but there's several diseases out here. There's sclerotinia, and there's phomopsis. There's lots of phomopsis. Phomopsis is a disease that girdles the plant, um, such as this one here, and it tends to make stalks more brittle. This one here too. Uh, and then there's also lots of sclerotinia out here. Sclerotinia would be like this one here, where it's fallen over and kind of look like black and not very desirable. And you certainly don't want to have those in with eating because they're hard, and you can break a tooth on them, and don't have any
So
good taste to them either.
What is the University of Minnesota there in Crookston doing with this research field? Are they trying to figure out like how to prevent those diseases or how to treat them? Do you know?
Yes, it's Megan McCahey's the pathologist looking at different control for primarily two diseases, sclerotinia and phomopsis. And those are the two limiting factors to growing sunflower in this region. And we're trying to see, there's this plot, this same plot is grown in Fargo, it's grown in South Dakota, and it's grown in Nebraska in multiple locations. So we get multiple states data to compare to see which ones do best. So it's really a comparison of different locations, different weather, and to see if the chemistries work better or not in many cases. And it's a challenge to come up with something.
Sure. Okay, we have a couple questions about the conditions that sunflowers grow in. So Mrs. Ruin's fifth graders are curious what kind of soil sunflowers grow best in. And Mrs. Ritchie's class is curious if you have to water the sunflowers or how much water they need to grow.
Well, sunflower is one of the most efficient crops because the rooting system we looked at early or before, they have very deep roots. And so they are able to take water in from the ground very efficiently. Sunflower tends to be grown in dry climates where there isn't excessive water. There's a lot of moisture, you tend to get more diseases. And this plot here was actually misted. It had a misting system here where they could mist it with water every so many hours to enhance the amount of diseases. So this one is not normal. And normally sunflowers are not watered. There are some cases in the high plains, Colorado, Kansas, Nebraska, where they'll split a irrigation field that's half corn and half sunflower. The sunflower gets one watering, the corn gets many waterings.
Okay, good to know. Good to know. Well, we only have a couple minutes left, John. This time has been flying by, and we have a number of questions about being a sunflower farmer. So, first of all, could you tell us how long you've been growing or been a sunflower farmer, what you enjoy the most, and what is the most challenging?
Well, I've grown sunflowers since 1972, almost every year. Uh, Challenges are the diseases, and some years the insects. The insects have been much less than the diseases, but Phomopsis and Sclerotinia is a major challenge because we don't have good ways of controlling it, and that's what we're looking at in this plot.
And what do you enjoy most about being a sunflower grower?
Well, I was started out meetings that I have. It's a blooming good crop. It's pretty crop. It's good profitability, and it's fun to grow a crop that's as attractive as what a sunflower is. And sunflower is used a lot in advertising because it's such a pretty crop.
We're showing that video again of the blooming sunflowers, John, and I would agree. It's it's pretty, it's beautiful, and it's fun to look at. So we are so excited that you were able to join us tonight. It's this afternoon. There's a couple more questions that I thought were kind of funny. And Mrs. Coffeen's fifth graders are curious to know if you sing to sunflowers, does that make them grow better?
I don't think so. I've probably been known to sing in a sunflower field, but I've never looked at if it's better growing or not. I wanted to cover a couple of things about some of the uses from the different sunflower just quickly here.
Yeah, go for it.
Confection are primarily for in shell. This is sunflower kernel, so this is dehulled, and then you can have a dry roast or salted and flavored or toasted sunflower, and you can have that in shell too. On the oil side, we have products that you can buy in most stores. Would be sunflower oil. These are both high oleic sunflower oil, and that's very similar in quality to olive oil. It doesn't have the taste of olive oil, but it has better functionality and is more healthy. You can get sunflower oil in for popcorn, sun butter, which is used in place of peanut butter. Doesn't have any of the allergy problems that you can have with peanut butter. Or now there's a company putting out sun butter jammies, which are a small snack of bread with jam and sunflower butter.
Awesome. So we should look for those in our local grocery store or wherever, or if you buy snacks and food, you can find some of those really awesome sunflower pieces. So John, thanks so much for joining us, and thank you classrooms and students. There was so many great questions. I'm sorry I wasn't able to ask all of them, but I hope you found this interesting. And I forgot to at the very beginning introduce my colleagues, my friends. Carrie, she was the voice you heard. She's doing the technology that we had a little blip of not so great service, but it went pretty well. And then Sarah's our camera person today. So thank you, team, for making this work. And thank you, John, and everybody else for joining us. Please stay tuned. We're going to try to do these virtual field trips about once a month during this school year. So we would love to have you back. So thanks, everyone. Have a great afternoon.
Thanks for the